Let me tell you in just a few points why America is obviously already fascist. I'll do it quickly. Bullying and bully culture is huge here. It's just something that you're supposed to expect and deal with. And what are the things you get bullied about? Ways that you are different from what the overculture thinks is the best type of person. We are still a slave-holding country, but we can't even get people to acknowledge that, even though it's very true, and it says it right in our Constitution. And even if you don't consider the slave labor, the number of people incarcerated per capita is wild. Lots of people think that there are acceptable reasons to be friends with homophobes and racists and all of that, especially if you happen to be related to them. Our cops have tanks and even submarines. Yes, look it up. But school teachers are paying for their kids' supplies with their own meager salaries. You can be denied a job, housing, even life itself because of the amount of melanin you have. And we don't think how goofy and unconscionable that is as a way to live your life, as a way to run a country. We are still to date the only country ever to use nuclear weaponry on another country. And even worse, the use of those weapons was completely unnecessary. Again, go look it up. Almost every failed state in the world is because of our intelligence apparatus, or directly our military. And yet, given all of these things, and many, many more, people still think we live in the freest country in the world. And I don't think that people have thought about this and dismissed it. I think that people really haven't legitimately wrapped their heads around it. Just like I don't think the average German person in the 30s was like, our country is probably pretty dangerous and we should do something about this. I know we're a fascist country because even the concept of propaganda is something we think only happens in other places, when here is the place it happens the most. Most of the statues and plaques and things you see commemorating famous or historical people are for soldiers. And if not for soldiers, then for wealthy people. Now, all of these are things you need for a fascist country to work, right? It doesn't just work if a fascist comes into power and then all of a sudden the country's fascist. That's not how it works. It's from the bottom up. It is from the people who are willing to do violence on behalf of the state. It's the people who think that their country is so good that it would never do any of the awful things, and then when the awful things are happening, downplaying the awful things, and then much, much later looking back perhaps with repentance, which is what happens every single time anything happens in our country, that our country has done. And my last example is one that I think a lot of you, even those of you who otherwise agree with me, are going to have a hard time with, but it is what it is. And maybe this isn't directly fascism per se, but it certainly primes the pump. We watched a significant percentage, like over 1% of Americans, die from a novel virus over the past few years, and what are we doing about it? Nothing. It is too much for most of us to wear a piece of cloth over our faces to stop that many people from dying over the next few years. We know the long-term damage it is causing, and we're doing nothing. Why? Because we've decided that the sick and the old are acceptable losses. You can call that what you want to, but you don't call that a democracy. You don't call that a healthy society. Because the truth of the matter is, fascism doesn't need everyone to be a fascist. It needs a small percentage of people to be actively fascist, and a large enough selection of people to just not say anything about any of it. Because when it gets down to it, it's not the soldiers that do most of the work of fascism. It's the people who are paying for conveniences in blood and not doing anything about it. And what you allow to happen to others, the machinery you allow to be built for the subjugation of others, will be turned on you sooner or later. Mark my words, it's coming for us.